application, yeah, could you tell the designers or the engineers to do that? And I'll just pass you all the requirements to the product managers. I mean, typically in project basis company, maybe that's how it works. But in our company, when we are still considered smaller teams, I wish that every one of us would be involved, designers would really be involved in the product requirements, gathering the requirements stage, because most of the time, if it didn't go through designers or engineers, the requirements become unclear. And then you need to redesign, go through many rounds, redesign, and then in the end you choose back the first design after you have 10 options. I think it sounds familiar to most people here, which is in the design, if you are working in the design industry. Then, in our case, we will have a designer and a product guy to talk to the whoever that is giving us the requirements and help them to polish up the requirements, because sometimes they do not know how hard it is to be executed. They thought it's just easy. Isn't it just add a button? How hard could that be, right? And after that, the execution part for design will be, after that, the execution will be sprint planning. UI UX also we involve in the engineering, in GoBike, specifically in GoBike. We are also involved in the development planning, which is called the sprint planning. We follow, the engineering team and design team follow the certain workflow, which is called Agile. I'm not gonna go too in details about how Agile works as well, because this is a rough overview on how do we provide our implementations and stuff. So Agile means that 2 weeks of iteration, development, and within these 2 weeks, after that we might have a new sprint to do iterations and stuff like that. So even design, we are involved in the sprint planning and also during the development stage. And within the development stage, we consistently keep track with the mobile developers or the web developers to check on the progress. We are very aware that you're not going to develop a full product in 3 days or 4 days, but please let me know what's the problem that you face during this period of time. Is everything on track? Visually, is it okay, everything? So as a designer in GoBike, designers in GoBike, we will follow up with the mobile developers or the developers generally closely on their progress, so that we make sure that the output is aligned, is expected by the product team or the business team as well. And we have a process called this, which is called DevBox or sandbox in engineering terms. And yeah, so we conduct DevBox regularly. And this DevBox is only between the designers and the engineers. Don't need the product or the business guys in, because it's not a full product. When they see, they may comment a lot of different things, out of scope stuff. So yeah, during development, we are also involved in that process. Finally, which is if they call it the development done, or before you release something, our designers will be involved in testing as well. I know that it might sound like it's not your scope or whatsoever. Aren't you just supposed to wireframe, draw sketches? But in our team, in the engineering team involves the UI UX, we are strongly preaching the culture that, yeah, it's not your role on testing, but it's your product. As a UI UX designer or as a product designer in this company, you should be very, very concerned on the features that you're building yourself. Because if not, the feature comes out, it's like, hey, why got bug? Or is it all the QAs or the testers' fault? And we will keep pointing. We don't like the pinpointing, the blaming kind of culture thing, because if anything goes wrong, it's the whole team's fault. It's not just the developers, it's also the designers, or it's also the QAs. Everyone is involved in it. If there's for example, if there's a bad experience or bad feature, the feature is developed in a not very good experience, QA or engineering team, you guys can give the feedback to the designers, because sometimes as you work on it, you might not know how good it is. You might think as a designer, oh, this is the perfect flow, and this is the perfect navigation, perfect animation, and stuff like that. But yeah, QAs or other people that is not designers are free to give comment and tell you that, okay, this behavior is bad. But does that mean that the designer is not doing a good job? It does not mean that, actually. In our case, in our engineering, we work as I said, we work very closely. Everyone is giving feedback to each other. Everyone is helping one another, and that's something that I think is very important, very good for designers, because okay, we have to keep ourselves in an open-minded, accept criticism. But if no one is giving you feedback, however open you are, you might not know how it's like. And it's good to hear it from the team itself. Okay. Okay, so start from the heavy part a bit. How do we get our stuffs out, the execution part. First, of course, research. And yeah, one of our research will be playing around with different apps. And these different apps, trust me, it should not be just your competitors or apps that consider with bad UI. Even it's bad UI, but if they got famous, you should also play with it, because you know we should always learn from like, okay, yeah, you're commenting that this UI or UX is bad, but how come this app is doing so well? I know still so many people using this app compared to certain apps and stuff, or vice versa. Some apps that have like perfect navigations, perfect UI, you know, work fully material design principles or human interface guidelines and stuff like that. But still, the number of people that are using the app is low, and no. So why? So does it mean that a great UI will translate to a great product? Like many people use it. Not so much, but I'm not saying that there's no contribution from UI UX. I'm just saying that as a designer, we should look at it again at the holistic view. UI UX, how well do they know the target audience and stuff like that, which is part of the very important part of research. Playing with different apps. And note down, okay, sometimes you need to, you definitely also need to refer to your competitors. So you also, we will have to learn that I have multi-platforms. I have iOS, I have Android, or maybe I even have React Native. So what's the difference of details between iOS and Android? We always try to figure it out. So meaning when you play one app, you're actually playing two apps if they have multiple platforms. And sometimes we might miss out that thinking, for example, Uber, the design between iOS and Android is very similar, it's so same, you know. But then, sorry. Okay, this guy, I'm supposed to show this slide, but I forgot it. Sorry, I'll skip to the next one. Yeah, so this is what I was saying, that the clear difference between iOS and Android. We like to go as detailed as possible to specifically changing your phone number, that screen is already a difference between iOS and Android. And the reason that we want to do this kind of research is to note down, actually it's not because of so much of, they are different and we should do different. It's more like, why are they different? And when we are constructing our own visuals or our own designs, we have to take in consideration that should we be very universal, or is it because of material guidelines says that and it's easier to be developed, and human interface says that's easier to be developed, that's why it's different? We have to do a little bit of investigation. Of course, don't spend like a whole day to do that, but actually some of the reasons is quite obvious. It's just because that actually Android, they have a separate Android team and a separate Android designer, and iOS, they just have a separate iOS designers to design their interfaces, or maybe that's the reason. So there's no clear, that's also one of the things that we have to make sure that how are we deciding our design route and not just follow blindly. So the second part of the research, user research, which I think if some of you were in the earlier session on Paul's session, you have heard a lot about user research, but this is actually very crucial to startups especially, because we need to know our target audience. Who are we talking to? Not just spend money to get them in your app and just leave them there. Okay. Yeah, they do use your app once in a while. And when they don't, you just look at the Google Analytics and say, oh, the drop-off is at this screen. Why? And without going details in depth with the users, we can never know why. And I know sometimes it's very hard in our case, the challenges is that if I want to do an in-depth research on certain target, how long will it take? How many resources do I need to do that? and yeah, you're spending 2 hours talking to just one guy. Are you sure about the ROI? Are you sure about that we can really spend like 3 manpowers on just one research or one session of research? That's why part of my personal challenge would be that I'm fighting for a lot of interview sessions, and I'm trying to make, I have to be super prepared on the questions, and I also have to be super prepared on the questions will lead to what answers, and these answers, how could it potentially help our particular objective of business, of our business. So if I'm not prepared for this, and when people ask, and when you are not prepared, you get not enough good information, you might not even get more chance to do that anymore, because you're just showing that you do not know how to do a user research. Then you should not waste time to do user research. So in part of our user research, we focusing a lot on empathy. I mean, there's a lot of same keywords as the earlier session, but I guess that's just how user research works around this field, especially when you're building a consumer-centric, a very consumer-centric product. It's not a B2B, it's not a fully, it's not a functional thing, it's not a need of your life, the kind of product. You might do a separate approach, not the fully design thinking process. So, and being empathy, observe in data, and also your eyes to validate how their behavior is like. And the last part of it is what we found out recently: experience. Experience, the customer's experience. So to show you how does it look like, oh yeah, sorry, before that, using all this research, we should be able to build a proper customer journey map. Okay, I took this from Starbucks as a reference because this is a very, very good one. And I think if anyone is interested to know more about customer journey map, you should look at this. It was built in like 10 plus years ago. So anyways, it shows that in this customer journey map, I have like many stages of how does my customer get in touch with me. Whether is it a physical product or a mobile app, there's no difference. It's still a framework. It's just a good framework for us to follow. And when you list down, when you start sitting down half a day, plotted out all these points, not half a day will make it the perfect map. You need many days or many data to support how do you refine and keep polishing up the map. But it gives you a very, very, very good idea on where's the worst, the pain point of your customer within this journey, within this experience of care, and then you can start thinking of ideas. But of course, before this, there's also a lot of building personas. That's very needed on your user research part. Before really coming up with the customer journey map, the understanding your users, building personas, that is very, very important. And this, okay, I'm really the UI UX designer, I'm not a biker, but to really get into their minds and their behaviors, even I have to try to join their daily job to experience the biker journey. I actually went on, I have no license, and I'm sitting at the back only. Okay, I'm not driving the bike. But, so yeah, that's also another thing that it does not make me maximize the experience of a biker, but at least try out a little bit would help a lot. And to be a biker, to explain this scenario a little bit, GoBike has a service which is we hook up with Family Mart and we deliver groceries for them, or snacks and like stuff that you can buy from. You just go to the app, GoMart is called the service, and then you buy from the stuff and the bikers will deliver from Family Mart for you. So essentially, GoBike also have a biker app, right? You have a customer app, you have a biker app. The problem is that we found out that how come there's no bikers picking up the GoMart job, for example. Yeah. So I had to go and try to be the biker. And one of the very good observations that I can share is that, imagine I'm a biker, the customer ordered like 1,000 stuffs. Well, not 1,000, the night I got this, I got them like a few bags, just 3 bags. There's like 100 plus, there's like some, what do you call it, the snack, Rocky or Pocky inside. And I have to carry all these things. And I'm not riding the bike, I'm just sitting behind, acting that if the biker is really carrying all these while riding. Oh man, the biker life is not easy, man. And we are saying that we are helping them to improve their life by giving them more jobs. In fact, if you really give them more jobs on this, we are actually not improving their life. I'm gonna spend, usually I'll spend like 10 minutes to buy a Family Mart, and now I'm like, oh, taking 30 minutes and it's so heavy, it's so tiring, and I earn that fixed amount, and now it's not worth it. So my point is that, sad to say, if we did not join them, okay, it's not just me, we got like some few operations guy and product guy to try to be the biker as well. After that, all of them realized that, guys, we really need to do something with the app experience really. And the best thing is that they are saying this, we had a kind of discussion saying that if I am the biker, how would I want to do this job? You know, I do not want to do this job anymore. So with that insight, we don't see it as a negative thing. Actually, I see it as a very, very positive thing, because I'm usually based in KL and I can't speak Thai, not even a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe can. And as a foreigner, I'm not very sure of the exact behavior or what's the cultural problems that might affect the behavior of our bikers or customers. Take away the communication barrier. Even if you ask me about if you ask anyone on that in my company, which is Thai, which is working on this product, none of them would even know exactly the bikers' behaviors and the bikers' mentality. So to do more of such experiencing the bikers' life, this kind of research, it will really help you to have a clearer picture of the biker persona. Like, okay, it's not the clearest, definitely, but it's shaping it clearer. And as I mentioned before, it will get the clearest picture the first day, but you have to embrace it and keep making it clearer and clearer. So one of the ways is to experience the journey, their life. The other way that is very useful is in-depth interview, a very generic solution that you can see on textbooks, in-depth interview. But the challenge of having an in-depth interview is that, do we know the objective of the interview? I also have to admit that we have a lot of interview sessions that we go without a proper objective. Of course, you could say the objective is to increase sales, but no, that's not the objective. That's the very, very high level thing. But in all sorts of interview sessions, we should have a very small goal that we want to achieve on this interview session. For example, in our experience, every biker that we meet, we want to know about the app. Do you face any problems on the app? Those are very superficial questions. Those are very general questions that it should be done every day. But when you get to meet the biker, we want to know the biker's life. Not to say really to be super close with him, but we want to know that, what do you like as a biker? Or no, not as a biker, as a human. What do you like? Actually, throughout the few sessions, the past few days, I just got here this early week, just to conduct more sessions of this. This week, I realized something very, very important. Your customer, regardless, okay, my customer today is a biker, but your customer could be someone else. It could be end users, it could be a merchant or a restaurant owner. But essentially, I feel like me and the biker, we are no difference. We are still human. We have things that we like. We have motivation in life. Whatever job that we are working on, right, we have a goal, just that you don't know my goal. And if you ask me more, maybe I will tell you. Same goes to the biker. If every time we think that, or your customer, every time you think that the goal is that, he's never gonna work, he's never gonna get more than X amount of money a month, and stuff like that. But that's not true. After these few sessions, I realized that our goal is to know what's their goal, so we can help them, because they are our customers. And do you realize until right now, we haven't even talked about the app? Because even though I'm building a mobile app product, we realize that if you do not know your audience very well, no matter how good the app experience is, no one is gonna experience it. No matter how buggy it is, if your product is super good, super helpful, you know the target audience the best, yeah, he would keep want to use it and he keep telling you buggy. He keeps telling you, hey, Stan, there's bug. I want to use this feature, but there's bug. But right now is that we don't want to be mediocre where I'll try to use. Oh, there's a bug. Okay, I'll leave it. That's it. So that's a lot of what's happening around. And I'm pretty sure that's not just on my company, that's on many companies. We are all focused on sales, on the money and the data too much. We should focus on the money, definitely. But we must take time to understand our target audience. So with all these stuffs, with all this, like, understand more about the bikers, then we can start thinking about the feature that we want to build. I'll start off from wireframings. Yeah, start with the flow first, not the UI details, not the button 56 pixel or 36 pixel. It's not the padding, it's the flow first. Because when you work in a team, maybe I'm putting a lot of context on that this is a product-driven company, this is working in a product team, not an agency and client basis. They have a different approach. The flow first, because the PMs, the requirements coming in telling you that I want X feature. So I should come up with the flow with all the screens inside the flow first. The details, the copywriting, we'll make sure that we will change it later on. But between the designer and the PM, you are not my client, so I should not give you the final version of the copywriting yet. We should work together to get the final copywriting. So let's just focus on the flow first to get things out fast. Then the next part is that you create the UI design system, which I will touch about it later, which is something very important to think about when you start a design project or when you're in a company. Does your company have a design system to follow, a design guide to follow, or how extensive will it be, and we slowly to improve on that. And the flow that we should create should cover as much negative flows as possible. And this is just because of my experience working very closely with the engineering. They always ask me, oh Stan, so what is it like if I'm in this rare scenario? It's a very edgy scenario that you wouldn't want to think of it daily. But why does it matter to them? Is because it affects their process. If we didn't think about, oh, what's the expected behavior of this certain negative flow, when the developers are doing it, they will stuck. And then they'll be like, they'll spend time and discuss again, and then we discuss again, what should we be doing for this negative scenario? And then you're wasting his time and you're wasting our time as well. Where sometimes we think that, isn't it a petty issue? Can you just do it the current whatever way it is first, then we think about it, how we improve it later. But I personally and my team would try not to. We will try to help the developers as much as we can to finalize the flows. And yeah, positive flows, of course, connections here and there, these screens, this is what we always give to our developers or the product managers when we are like doing the sprint planning, and everyone's very clear on like, oh, this is whole flow. And let me share one example, one stuff with you on this flow. This is a service or a design of a feature service design that I received, but actually the feature only happens. The feature only happens here. This is the one screen, two screens that we are supposed to come up with. Then again, why the whole thing, right? This is also another experience that we had in my team, is that, yeah, the impacted screen is just, I'm adding one new screen, but this one new screen will always be impacting a lot of other flows. So it's like one of the questions that I think always we will hear, why not we just add a button there and that's it? And isn't that easy, just to add a button? Even in developers, they definitely will agree it's easy. Some designers will agree it's easy, but in our case, we say maybe first. let's find out if I add this button, how many screens will be impacted. You never know. Like, you really never know until you like play it out yourself, and then you see that, hey, how come I add a button on this, I call it location picker screen, it will affect my menu, and how come it will also affect my registration flow. A lot of this happens in my place before, so to really reduce this friction, we just have to go through in detail whatever feature that you're doing, and go through again the whole app to see that if it's gonna impact certain screens or not. Of course, there will be like special cases, the ad hoc cases that you cannot do it so detailed and all, but yeah, it's a good practice to always look at the whole app again when you design a feature so you don't miss out a certain flow. And follow up, this is something that we also practicing, which is having a visual design system, a specs, a style guide, or on web it's always called a style guide. I'm showing a very rough version, and sorry, not a rough version, a very simple version only. What does it consist of usually? It consists of a color palette, typography, all the styling of the typography, paddings, input styling, yes, but it should be more than just this. It should also cover like what happens in what kind of interactions are we expecting for navigation? I have not updated that yet, but for mobile apps specifically, we should always know that what kind of navigation, designers should always aware what kind of navigations, the interaction of the navigations should happen when I press X. What's the difference between I press X or I press the back button, or if I press the cancel button, what's the different expected interaction should happen. I think this is something that should be documented down as well in our style guide, and also animations, key motions, and a lot of all these like tiny little things. It would be nice to have. Definitely, it's not the best to have. It's spending a lot of effort and time to polish a style guide, but it's always good to have so that when it actually improves the building feature time taken, because whenever that you have a new feature next time, you could just show that, okay, the interaction should be this way because based on the style guide, it works on this way. And yeah, it's supposed to smoothen the process of creating UIs. And also buttons should be included into our UI specs. So another thing of the UI specs would help is for design handoff, which is something that I'll be adding on later as well. So for our case, before we kickstart our development, right, we will do some sort of like handoff to the developer, saying that this padding is this, and that padding is that, and this font is using this style, and blah blah blah. What color is it? And all of these are being done in Sketch as well, just Sketch right now. And there's a tool actually to help for design handoff. You don't have to right now we're doing it manually because we have a certain reason to do that manually. But for most people, the designers out there or any other products company, they will be using Zeppelin. There will be a combination of Sketch and Zeppelin. So they have a very good integration between these two products. So if anyone has a problem of creating a design handoff, specifically just on screens, you can check it out, Zeppelin. It's called. But right now, as I mentioned, we are only using on Sketch because of the time that the instance that we change our design is actually very fast, and we need to update our things very fast. For us, Zeppelin might not be the most efficient way. That's why we will have a Sketch cloud, which is linked to our Sketch product. Which our Sketch working file, and whenever we press refresh, it just updates to the cloud instantly. Pretty good. And in the Sketch cloud, usually I just send this link to the designers. These are the screens involved, and this is the design guide for you to follow, right? And another one is about naming. We have to be aware of the naming. We need to create a screen to calculate fare. PM, I think, is called booking screen. Designer call it a fare calculation screen. When it goes to engineering, it's called track fare. In our case, we have a lot of this kind of confusion where the names are quite similar, just like slightly different meaning, very slightly different meaning, and as a designer, we should be aware that what's their naming. If you can't change them to follow your naming, then you must know that, oh, when the PM say booking screen, he actually meant the developer's check fare. But the best is still that make us all align. What do you call that screen name? Or screen is just one of the example. For designers to developers, what's this? Design will call it a back icon. Designers will call sometimes they will call it arrow. If you don't tell them specifically, it might call arrow, right? Wait, sorry. Okay, so the last part of our process involves in prototyping. Recently, for the past 3-4 months, prototyping, or I should refine it, it's called interactive prototyping. There's many ways of prototyping, but we just follow specifically the interactive version. It's proven to help to align expectation between developers and also the product managers. And we can also use the interactive prototype to conduct usability tests, even before it goes to development. So I'll show you a little bit of tools that we are using. We use Framer, this is Framer, and the other one, Prototype. And for Framer, before that, does anyone use Framer here as well? Right, awesome. So Framer is like a combination of code and design. You use a minimal code, which is CoffeeScript. It's part of a JavaScript framework. And I mean, it's not very extensive, but to pick it up, after you pick up this language, right, it will help you to develop a very logical, interactive prototype. But it takes a little bit of time. That's why we have an alternative, which is Prototype. If you're building something that's not so much of logic required, weird logic required, it's more visual. Yeah, Prototype is a very, very fast tool. And I have the example of how Framer works right now, and I can't show you the prototype version of our stuff because couldn't access to certain things. So, yeah, this is to build a payment feature, right? Oh, it's not working. Okay. And I use QuickTime to record it. So it looks like this. And this input field, it interacts with your device. If you're using a phone, it actually shows you a keyboard. But right now, because I'm using a website to record it, so I'm viewing this prototype on desktop. That's why it only interacts with my computer keyboard. And this is an interactive prototype that we use before it goes out to development. It aligns, it's done actually. It aligns the expectations. And developers make something, it's, oh okay, you should do something. And this is another version that recently, I'm not going to show you everything because I think it's quite a bit of time, but I will talk as it goes. We use this prototype and bring it out to do a usability test with our customer, which is the bikers, the motorbikers. Using this, right, we got a lot of good feedback on like, what do they think about this? They tell us that, oh, it's not enough color, this prototype. And when you build this feature, can you add more colors? Because I think colors motivates me more. One of the feedback from the bikers. And you see, there's a lot of logic involved in this, even this feature. Even you might not see it so obvious, but if you look at the code itself, there's actually many logics. And Framer gives you the flexibility to do a lot of things in terms of logic, right? Okay, so to wrap up a little bit, our process involves in like research, wireframing, prototype, then again research, because that part of research is called usability test, right? So the initial research is just to understand your target audience generally, not specifically for any feature, or you could do it for feature request stuff as well, but start from research again, then we draw out the things and prototype up and let them play and know the feedback. So this is a continuous process that we shouldn't be just doing it one time. There needs to be follow up. And okay, I have some resources to share. Definitely you are not able to copy all the links right now, I realize. So if anyone is interested to get to know more about the tools or some of the hand-off things that you might need, there's some of these resources. I actually not enough time, but we also have a lot of like use a lot of external libraries such as Lottie that could help developers to build animations. So the animation is done from our design side, and then we just export it to a JSON to a code file and pass it to the developer, and then they can use it. So that again is pretty much engraved in our design process already. Even our UI UX designers, you need to do animations, not just like screens. And yeah, so another design handoff book. It gives you a very fast way to export your assets and your design specs from Sketch to developers. React Symbols UI Kit. If anyone is working on React Native apps, yeah, you could prepare a lot of good. You can help them to improvise their UI using that link already. And prototypes, interactive ones, the tutorials are really easy. Trust me, if you look at the tutorials, you'll be loving it. It's not scary, the codes. It's not that scary after all. As for research, so I actually have a copy of the D-School Bootcamp bootleg, which is from Stanford. It should be, if anyone is more interested about design thinking, and yeah, you could look for me. I could perhaps if you email me. I could like send you a copy of it. Because we didn't talk a lot about design thinking. There's like other sessions to talk about it, right? Yep. That's all that I have for today. And if you're interested, let's keep in touch on LinkedIn or email, and let's try to. I'm looking to share more cool stuff together and build more communities and conversations around UI UX, because in Malaysia it's not that easy to get a team of people to like these things, right? So thank you very much, guys.
We got a time for one question? One question? Please on the dot.
Great. It's either I'm too clear or is it I'm not clear at all.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Stan will still be here afterwards, so please give him a big round of applause again. Giving you like this is the limited edition chapter,
Right.
and this is the okay. Awesome, and thank you very much. And we're gonna take a 15 minutes.